Hey guys, I recently purchased an epigenetic age test from a company called Optimally Me, and I thought I'd take this opportunity to do a quick product review. So this requires a blood sample, which I don't have to fast for. I then post it back to them Monday to Thursday, and I get results in 6 to 8 weeks. They only launched this product a few weeks ago, so I'll be one of the first to try it.
Opening up the test kit, I'm met with the instructions, which include preparing for the blood sample and activating the kit. The tube stands up in a little cutout of the cardboard, and I need to remove the purple lid. Here I am running my hands in warm water before the test, and I actually prefer lying down so my hand is the lowest point of my body. So I'm pricking my finger, wiping the first drop of blood, and then letting it drip into the tube until it reaches the required line. I then pop the lid on while trying not to get blood everywhere, swirl the tube, then fill out the information on the return form. The tube goes in the transport pouch, which goes in the box with the return form, and that then goes into the prepaid envelope, which I post later that morning. I then had to wait for my results. On the website, it says results in 48 hours, which they seem to have accidentally copied from their other blood tests. Further down, it says up to 10 weeks. However, it took 7 weeks just to arrive at the lab, and a further 7 weeks to be analysed, meaning exactly 100 days after posting my sample before I got my results. Once I'm logged in, I'm met with a dashboard. They have another feature which uses AI to determine facial age, which is why my picture appears over here. There were 10 biomarkers, 3 of mine are high and 7 are optimal. I can see more detail by going to the top menu and selecting DNA-M age. The headline result is that I am 1 year younger than my chronological age. It also gives me a percentile rank for people of my age, and I'm in the 67th percentile, meaning 1 in 3 people my age have a lower biological age than me. I don't know if this is only from participants in the research papers or if it's including other Optimally Me customers. If it's the latter, I imagine there might be some sort of healthy user bias. The sort of people taking these tests are generally quite healthy, looking to confirm their lifestyle behaviours, maybe get themselves a pat on the back, so they're not representative of the general population. Moving on to the individual biomarkers, each of these is used as input to generate my biological age, so it makes sense that if I'm 1 year younger than my chronological age, then most of them are green. There's a fair amount of text associated with each marker, which appears directly under the graph. The first red result is growth differentiation factor 15, which I've never heard of, but a sign that my muscles are aging. I've consistently lifted weights for the last 21 years, and I'm curious to know if that's had any effect. I'm also relieved because if this is my worst marker, then I'm in a really good position to offset any detrimental effect from muscle aging, because I can tell you right now, in 21 years' time, I will still be consistently lifting weights. My second abnormal result is beta-2 microglobulin, shortened to B2M. Again, I've never heard of it. This one speeds up my cognitive decline. But again, looking at the risk factor and percentile rank, I'm not concerned because around half the people tested are in a worse position than me. Lastly, adrenomedulin, and we are 3 for 3 on biomarkers I have never heard of. This is a peptide involved in improving blood flow and general health of my circulatory system, so the transporting of blood and fluid around my body. If you plot all 10 percentiles versus the risk factor, you can see it's pretty much a straight line, so it feels like you may as well ignore the risk factor and focus on percentiles. Even my worst one, muscle aging, shows that 1 in 3 people have higher levels, so I'm very much middle of the pack. As for the green ones, they include a few markers I have heard of: cystatin C for kidneys, HbA1c for metabolic health, and C-reactive protein for the heart. There's also leptin, which alongside ghrelin is one of the hunger hormones. Ghrelin is associated with hunger, while leptin signals a feeling of satiety or fullness. It's listed under the immune section because it manages T cells, helping fight infections, and mine is bang average. I have a protein marker for my extracellular matrix called TIMP1, which helps maintain the structural integrity of my cells and aids in wound healing. Elevated levels are associated with a range of diseases, so it's good to have mid-range levels. The final acronym I had to learn was PAI, Plasminogen Activator Inhibitor 1. Too much in my body can't break down clots, meaning an increased risk of heart attack or stroke. It says regular exercise and keeping a healthy weight can help regulate these levels, meaning it's modifiable through lifestyle factors. The last one is the lungs, which is based on pack years. That's the number of packs of cigarettes per day multiplied by the number of years the person has smoked. It wasn't clear whether this was taken from my health questionnaire or inferred from the blood test result, but since I'm a non-smoker, that's easy. The number is 0. My wife has smoked about a pack a week for 7 years, which is the same as 1 pack a day for a year, meaning 1 pack year, or nearly 7,500 cigarettes. So I can see how it has the potential to negatively impact the aging process. I thought I'd make the effort to read a little more into the science behind the test. The reason I purchased it in the first place was the mention of GrimAge 2. I've listened to several podcasts with Steve Horvath as a guest, and the tests he was coming up with sound exciting. They cite his paper in the evidence, and I took some time to go through it as a layman. The original GrimAge was designed to predict time to death, and it did so more accurately than any other paper's attempts. They also noted that the surrogate marker they were using for pack years outperformed people's self-reported smoking history in terms of predicting lifespan, which answers my question as to whether they were simply using my profile information to calculate that value. I learned that the little m in DNA-M shows that it's a surrogate marker for plasma proteins. In other words, they're measuring something else and estimating what they really want to know. They started with surrogate markers for 88 plasma proteins and found only 12 had at least moderate correlation between their actual measured levels and their estimated levels, which doesn't sound that reassuring. In fact, under the limitations, they go further to state that some of the data collected on plasma proteins was taken 6.5 years before the DNA methylation data. So depending on how much you can change over that time, that also doesn't sound great. The model eventually picked out pack years and 7 other surrogate markers. One of the surrogate markers involves leptin, which has a sex-specific relationship, and so the actual calculation of GrimAge is a linear combination of chronological age, sex, and 8 DNA-M-based surrogate markers, namely all the ones I just read about in my test. They used GrimAge to come up with a metric called Age Excel Grim, where a positive value indicates that GrimAge is higher than expected based on chronological age. They found associations between Age Excel Grim and type 2 diabetes, hypertension, reduced physical function, and early menopause. The paper also answered the question I had when looking through my results, which is how much of this is under my control versus inherited from my parents. Heritability explained 30% of Age Excel Grim, as well as 30 to 50% of several of the surrogate biomarkers, meaning that it is partially heritable. The paper for GrimAge 2 was published in late 2022. It added 2 new DNA-M-based estimators of log CRP and log HbA1c plasma proteins. For anyone not familiar with logs, instead of everyone's CRP being plotted on an axis that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where each number is adding to the previous number, it might go 1, 10, 100, where each number is 10 times the previous one. With these 2 extra markers, they found that it performed better. They then looked to see how well it correlated with the health and lifestyle information they had about the subjects. They used CT scan data and found Age Excel Grim correlated with liver density and visceral fat. Visceral fat is the unhealthy fat around your organs, and a dense liver would be an indication of something called fatty liver disease, which is thought to affect about 1 in 4 adults in some Western countries. One of the most interesting comparisons I found was this chart, looking at various lifestyle factors. Blue means higher is better, red means it's worse. So some of the beneficial correlations were with a higher proportion of carbohydrate in the diet and quite a few vitamins and minerals, though interestingly not omega-3. This was from a food frequency questionnaire, which is a notoriously inaccurate way of assessing someone's diet. Much stronger correlations for carotenoids, something called beta-cryptoxanthin, lutein, and zeaxanthin, which are found in high concentrations in certain fruits and vegetables. The last one to pick out is FEV1, a measure of lung function, which you can test with a spirometer. The negatives included high-fat diets and red meat, but some of the strongest were your log CRP, a measure of inflammation, your waist to hip ratio, which I guess is a way of gauging your visceral fat, and the strongest negative is whether you're currently a smoker. The last thing that caught my eye as a 37-year-old was the age of the individuals whose data they used to train the model. GrimAge 2 was trained on individuals between the ages of 40 and 92 with a median of 65, so it's expected to work well in older adults. They tried to evaluate its use in younger individuals, taking a group between 22 and 39 with a mean age of 35. They found that it isn't aligned with chronological age, creating a systematic offset with a median absolute error of 11 years. It's not that clear on the supplementary graph, so if I open up the x-axis, then scale the y-axis, you get better appreciation for what's going on. Since they provide a GrimAge calculator online to put in your biomarker results, I assume the output from Optimally Me has factored in this offset to come up with my result of 36. This made me wonder if my percentile rank is only based on the dozen or so people in the additional evaluation who were around my age when tested. As for what 36 means in practical terms, it doesn't mean that I'm going to live 1 year longer. It's more about assessing hazard ratios when looking at my risk of mortality. So at this age, I can't imagine it makes much difference. Okay, hopefully that's left you more clued up for the next section where I jump back into my dashboard. I'll move on to the section called Recommendations, where they display lifestyle changes I can do to improve my health and therefore my score, bearing in mind some markers are more flexible than others. I have 11 recommendations in total. 4 relate to dietary best practice, including following a balanced and anti-inflammatory diet, moderating salt intake, and focusing on healthy omega-3 fats. My diet is already rich in omega-3, but I'll take on board the other ones, particularly the salt intake. There's a specific call out for blueberries, which also feature quite heavily in my diet. And then the final 6 recommendations are supplements. I don't know why their suggestions center around taking a pill as opposed to incorporating more vitamin and mineral-rich foods in my diet, especially carotenoid supplementation when there are great sources like bell peppers, broccoli, and carrots. It's possible that the levels of these are very difficult to obtain through food alone, which is why supplementation is suggested. I would say these do feel quite accurate and personalized to me. I track my food with Chronometer, and vitamin E is something I know I struggle with, though my own actions led me to start including more sunflower seeds in my diet. I've also had an ongoing folate deficiency despite eating plenty of spinach and legumes, and in the 100 days between taking the test and getting results, I'd already started taking a vitamin B complex every morning, and this pulled my folate levels up nicely in an unrelated blood test. I found it a little strange that being in the 53rd percentile triggered recommendations for brain aging, but immune aging in the 49th percentile is green and optimal. So I would have liked to have seen what lifestyle factors were associated with the other markers. If nothing else, it might mean I keep doing them. Overall, my first impression was that there was a lot of new terminology, and it would have helped to prime me for the results experience if they'd prompted me to learn more about the 10 biomarkers and linked me to the GrimAge papers. The fact I was waiting 100 days for my results, that was a perfect window of time in which to learn more about what I was going to see. In reality, I saw RED for 3 acronyms I've never heard of and had to sit and read through everything to figure out what's going on. More generally, I've heard several people in health and longevity say that epigenetic age is something where marketing is now ahead of the science. It's still too noisy at the individual level to be useful. Its application is more at the research setting where you're taking the average change across hundreds of participants. Some of the tests on the market only have an accuracy of plus or minus 4 years, so you can imagine telling me my biological age is between 32 and 40 for a true age of 37 is not that useful. Even saying that I'm 36, I'm not really sure what to do with that number. So if you're taking a test like this, you should consider what actions you're going to take based on the result. If it's only going to tell you something you already know, that you should quit smoking or exercise more, do you really need to take the test? The fact it took 100 days makes it quite impractical for repeat testing. If I have to wait 3 months to find out what changes to make, then I make them for 3 to 6 months. I then wait another 3 months to find out if they had any effect. On the other hand, if the recommendations they've given me right now are very likely to work, then I can just implement them, don't need to take the second test, and I can just assume that they've made me healthier. They've included a results over time graph at the bottom of the page, but nothing I've encountered during this process has given me any urge to test again. That's another consideration when you're shopping around for these tests. Is the value from a single snapshot or from monitoring it as you age and making changes? The fact that the cohort of individuals this test was based on were much older means it doesn't seem that relevant to people under the age of 45 or 50, whereas I see a lot of the marketing and it feels like those are the people being targeted. One final consideration is the pace at which these new tests are coming out. GrimAge 2, which this test was based on, was published in late 2022, the original GrimAge in 2019. So in a few years' time, this test and others like it might be outdated with a more accurate one on the market. I would say that the recommendations being so closely aligned with what I know I need to work on has given me a little extra motivation to clean up my diet. I've taken the very painful decision to reduce my bread intake because that's where I get a lot of my dietary salt. Also, having read the lifestyle correlations in the GrimAge 2 paper, I'm going to find out how to measure and improve my FEV1 and go and eat a whole load of carrots. Thanks for watching.